Caleb Rowan knelt in the middle of the empty cattle pen with mud and dried blood caked into his hands. The ground was frozen hard, and every movement sent pain through his shoulders. The last cow he owned lay dead behind him, taken by cold and hunger during the night. He dug a grave with a shovel whose handle was split down the middle, and every scoop of dirt felt like it was cutting deeper into him than the blade ever could. Behind him, nailed crooked to the door of his rotting cabin, the bank notice snapped in the wind. 7 days left. After that, the land would be gone. Caleb had once been a rancher. Now he was just a man waiting to disappear from Dust Hollow. The wind grew sharper, slicing through his coat, and he stepped into the collapsed horse barn to escape it. The roof sagged low, the boards groaning with every gust. At first he thought the sounds inside were only the wind playing tricks on him. Then he saw her. She stood in the shadows, nearly a head taller than he was, an Apache woman with broad shoulders and arms carved hard by years of labor. Her buckskin shirt was torn and whipped wildly by the air rushing through the broken walls. Thick black hair lashed across her face, but her eyes stayed fixed on him, dark and steady. Without fear, she stepped forward, close enough that Caleb felt the weight of her presence. Before he could speak, her voice rolled through the barn, deep and firm like thunder over open plains. She told him she wanted him now. She ordered him not to move. She said she needed a husband. The wind screamed outside, rattling the old boards, and Caleb stood frozen, unsure if he was facing a threat or the moment his life would turn forever. Instinct made him step back until his shoulders pressed against the rotten wall. He was tall, by Dust Hollow standards, but standing before Asha Redfeather, he felt small, like a man facing living stone. She did not advance. She only watched him, patient, as if the world itself was waiting for his answer. She asked if he understood her words. Caleb swallowed and told her she had the wrong place. He said he had nothing to offer anyone. His voice shook despite his effort. Asha glanced around the empty barn at the dry feeding trough, then past him, to the bank notice flapping on the cabin door. She nodded once, as if everything she needed to know had been confirmed. She said she knew exactly who he was and why she was there. She did not come begging. She came with an offer. She needed a legal husband under white law, a last name for the child she planned to carry, and a house under a man's name so those hunting her would have no reason to come. In return, she had land hidden in the canyon, cattle kept far from prying eyes, and the strength of an Apache warrior. She told him she did not need love or promises. She needed existence. Caleb laughed, dry and broken, and told her she had chosen the wrong man. He said the land was about to be taken, and he could barely keep himself alive. Asha stepped closer, just enough for him to see faint scars lining her arms. She told him he was still standing, and that was enough. Silence fell between them, thick and heavy. Caleb heard only the wind and the echo of every failure that had brought him here. If he said no, he would leave Dust Hollow as nothing. If he said yes, he might die, but he would die having chosen something. Asha spoke again, laying out the terms. No preacher, no flowers, just work, a roof, and a child who would never bow. Their head. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the dirt. Caleb looked at his hands, then back at the towering woman before him, and understood this was not an invitation. It was the last road left open. He agreed quietly and said he would sign. Asha nodded once. She did not smile. As the last light faded, the old life of Caleb Rowan ended. They were married 3 days later, when the wind finally calmed enough for silence to settle over Dust Hollow. There was no preacher and no townsfolk. Only the endless gray sky and the barren plains watched as Caleb bent a rusted horseshoe into a ring and slid it onto her finger. No vows were spoken. No kiss was shared. It's just a slow nod, like two people sealing a pact to survive. They lived under the same roof, but as strangers. No questions, no touch. Asha rose before dawn each day, hauling wood, fixing fences, and patching the roof with steady precision. Her strength carried work that once took Caleb all day. People from town whispered from a distance, calling him weak for letting a woman do his labor. Caleb said nothing. He worked harder, learned silence, and learned that true strength did not need to shout. At night, they shared a table with few words between them. Only the sound of spoons and the wind against the walls. Once, Caleb asked if she regretted it. Asha asked him the same. He answered no, and for the first time, it was true. Trust began to grow, slow and quiet, between two broken people standing side by side in a land that crushed the weak. The first snowstorm of the season came without warning, as if Dust Hollow wanted to remind them how easily life could be taken away. The wind screamed across the plains, carrying ice that cut its skin and wood alike. The cabin groaned under the pressure, each plank shaking like it might give up at any moment. Asha was still outside when the light began to fade. She had climbed onto the roof, trying to hold down loose boards before the storm ripped them away for good. Caleb stood below, his chest tight with fear he did not want to admit. He had watched her handle work that broke other people, but a blizzard did not care about strength. The wind hit her broad frame hard, and for the first time, he saw her stagger. A sharp crack split the air as a board snapped loose. Asha slipped. Caleb did not think. He ran out into the storm without grabbing a coat. He caught her just before they both fell into the snow. Her arms slammed into the edge of the roof, and dark blood spread through her torn shirt. He dragged her inside, his voice stripped of calm, telling her they had to get in now. She did not argue. Inside the cabin, the oil lamp flickered weakly. The storm howled like something alive, trying to tear the walls apart. Caleb cleaned her wound with the last of their warm water. For the first time, his hands touched her skin. Beneath the muscle was warmth, a steady heartbeat. Asha watched him closely, her face unreadable. She told him he did not have to do this. Caleb did not look up. He said she was his wife, no matter the reason. The lamp went out as the storm reached its peak. Darkness closed around them, thick and close. They sat near each other, so close they could hear each other breathe. There were no questions, no words asking permission. Asha reached first. What happened between them was not gentle and not planned. It was two lonely people finding warmth in the coldest night of their lives. When it was over, they lay still, listening to the storm claw at the roof. Asha spoke softly, saying she did not want to bring a child into the world, only to see them bow to anyone. Caleb turned toward her in the dark and told her the child would never bow, not while he was still standing. In that moment, something shifted. Their marriage stopped being only a pact to survive. It became something bound by blood and choice. Winter pulled back slowly, leaving mud and scars behind. One morning, Caleb noticed the way Asha paused longer after heavy work, the way her hand rested on her stomach when the wind rose. When he asked, she nodded once. From that day on, Caleb changed. He woke earlier and worked until his hands shook. He rebuilt fences stronger than before and cleaned his old rifle each night. He was no longer running from fate. He was standing. Against it, news traveled through Dust Hollow in whispers. Word came that Asha's old tribe had learned of her. An Apache woman who ran, married a white man, and carried his child was seen as a betrayal written in blood. Asha said they would come, not to talk. Caleb nodded. He did not ask when. Trouble always arrived at the worst time. The town stayed quiet. The same people who once mocked him now avoided his eyes. No one wanted to stand between a revenge story and its ending. One afternoon, Caleb found strange hoofprints near the creek. The next morning, an arrow was stuck deep into the fence. Number? Message? No warning. Asha studied it for a long time and told him he could still run. Take the land and leave her behind. Caleb broke the arrow in half and threw it to the ground. He said he had been running his whole life and would not do it again. Asha looked at him for a long moment, and in her eyes was something new. Not just survival, but recognition. The attack came on a moonless night, wrapped in snow and silence. Caleb woke before he heard the hoofbeats, an old instinct pulling him from sleep. Shapes moved beyond the fence, 5 warriors standing like shadows from Asha's past. She stepped out behind him with one hand on her belly, telling him not to fight. Caleb stepped forward, placing himself between them and the cabin. He said this was his land, and if they wanted her, they would have to go through him. The first shot rang out, swallowed by the storm. Chaos followed. Snow, wind, and gunfire blended into a white blur. Caleb fired steadily, holding the line with every step. When one man broke through the fence, Asha surged forward, striking him down with a force born of fury and protection. Blood stained the snow. The attackers pulled back, not defeated, but warned. When the yard fell silent again, Caleb stood bleeding, breath heavy. Asha pressed her forehead to his in a rare, wordless gesture. That night, in the heart of the storm, Caleb Rowan became something Dust Hollow rarely saw. A man who chose to stand. The storm did not end after that night. It lingered, testing Dust Hollow one last time. By the third day, the wind softened, but inside the cabin something far more powerful had begun. Before dawn, Asha gripped Caleb's arm and told him it was time. Her voice was steady, but her body trembled with pain. Caleb froze. He had faced men who came to kill him, but nothing had ever shaken him like this moment. There was no doctor, no midwife, only the oil lamp and boiling water. Outside, the wind howled like it wanted to tear the world apart. Asha endured in silence, her face tight with pain, refusing to break. She told Caleb that if she did not survive, the child was his and must grow up free. Caleb knelt before her and told her both of them were staying. He said it with a certainty he had never known before. Thunder cracked as the final pain came. Asha cried out, the sound cutting through the cabin. Caleb held on, guided by instinct and fear. Then a new sound filled the room, a strong cry. He lifted the child with shaking hands, a small girl gripping his finger with surprising strength. Asha looked at her and then at Caleb. She named the child June, as if answering her. The storm outside finally began to ease. Spring came slowly to Dust Hollow, like an apology that arrived too late but was still welcome. Snow melted into mud, and green grass pushed through soil once soaked with blood. The ranch stood steady, not richer, not larger, but alive. June grew strong under the care of 2 people who had once been cast aside. Asha taught her to stand, tall and face the wind. Caleb taught her how to listen to the land and when to stand her ground. The town changed in small ways. Curious stares turned into nods, whispers faded into silence. Dust Hollow never apologized. It simply learned to accept. Those who refused to vanish. No one from Asha's old tribe ever returned. Maybe they understood the debt had been paid. Maybe they saw that some families are built by choice, not blood, at sunset. Caleb often stood on the porch, watching the plains stretch to the horizon. He was no longer a man waiting to be erased. He was not a hero either. He was simply a man who stayed. One evening, with June asleep inside, Asha sat beside him under the soft glow of the lamp. She asked if he regretted it. Caleb shook his head and said, "Not once." Asha nodded and said the same. The wind moved gently across Dust Hollow. Now, no longer a scream, but a quiet breath. And the story of Caleb and Dasha was not about romance or promises. It was about two broken souls who chose survival together and found something stronger along the way. In a land that took everything, they left behind what could never be stolen. A family that would never bow.